don't sleep to dream, we sleep to build stamina, energy to do our thing. Get your camera up. This show is about to begin, so sit down and buckle it in. Let's go! Hey, welcome everybody. I am here with Rob, R&B, the man, the myth, the legend. How you doing today, brother?
You know, I'm all right.
I'm okay.
I don't know why I do this to myself. Over and over again.
Oh, watching
How many
Star
years has
Trek?
it been since 2017? Oh wait, what?
Just continually watching Star Trek? Yeah.
I don't know if I'd call it Star Trek, but I was watching something.
Yeah, I know. You know what's funny is, and we're gonna get into that, but it definitely felt more like Star Trek. My mic is low. My bad. It felt more like Star Trek this time than the last few seasons.
Did it?
It felt like they're getting better at emulating it, but there's still so many problems.
I thought it felt like anything but Star Trek. To me, it was Guardians of the Galaxy. It was Indiana Jones. It was all these things until
those vibes.
Until you realize it's a sequel to a TNG episode.
It is, yes. And we're going to get into that. But first, hello, everybody. My name is Brian. I'm here with Rob. My brother Shane has taken a sabbatical from streaming. And in the meantime, I got all these great guests on. And it was what's the Jewish word for Kisma? It was perfect that I got that email around the same time I saw Rob active on Twitter. And I got the email that said we had the screeners, and I was like, "Oh, really? Okay." And I immediately hit Rob up and said, "You want to come talk this Thursday?"
I almost didn't get to see anything because of this crazy windstorm we had that disrupted internet. So I went and got a giant Ethernet cable and strung it from my house to the office to the Robservatory.
To the Robservatory. Well, I'm glad you did that. I was almost like, when you told me, I was like, well, I'm going to do it solo. I mean, there's plenty to talk about.
There is plenty to talk about. But
yeah. So we're only going to be talking about the first episode. Our plan initially was to talk about everything. But there's so much to talk about in the first episode. We're just going to talk about the first episode. And we can't do too many spoilers because even though I didn't expect, I do a stream every single Thursday at 4:00, yet my wife consistently calls me every single Thursday at 4:00. It's very odd. Because I was surprised to get the screeners, but I still want to be careful with spoilers because, we signed an NDA for it, and I don't want to piss anybody off. I mean, if they're still willing to give us screeners after the last 3 debacles, then more power to them.
Sure. I agree. We shouldn't spoil anything.
But in the members section, I'm going to be definitely freer with my
more than they spoil it themselves.
All right, they did spoil a lot. Yeah, did you notice the name of this, the first episode is called Red Directive?
Yes.
Which is a spoiler. It's a spoiler. The name of the episode is a spoiler.
It really is. And I think, look, here's what I think about this particular show. I mean, we've been wantonly making fun of this show for a long time. And I think part of my problem was the way it was originally conceived. The actual showrunner and where the original idea for the show came, that was Brian Fuller, and he was dismissed. Right. For various reasons we don't have to get into, but the idea of the show was substantial. I've always felt the show was hijacked by Alex Kurtzman,
sure,
and his group of people, and it was hijacked, and they took concepts that were originally created or thought of by Brian Fuller and changed them into things that were relatively nonsensical, as if they didn't quite understand what some of those themes were, like the idea first and foremost of a spore drive. I think that came out of something.
Yeah.
And I've never been able to buy into the magic. One of the things about Star Trek
is mushroom drive. And dude, they named the scientist that was working on it Paul Stamets, who's like the most famous.
Well, that was a Brian Fuller thing.
Guy. Right. Okay.
But he was, Brian loves that guy. There was an episode of Hannibal that dealt in a truly chilling episode that dealt with something that ideas Stamets had put forward.
Mhm.
But to me, from the very beginning, Discovery has had a bunch of like people have said to me, well, Rob, it's not like Star Trek had great science. But like all great science fiction, you create new technology and you make your audience suspend their disbelief. And that's why you can have, look, the transporter was a workaround, sorry, a workaround from not having to show your characters.
They didn't have the budget to do establishing shots on planets, right?
Well, to land.
Or to land
they
shuttles,
couldn't land down. So the transporter was a really easy production workaround.
I love the way they explained it scientifically was with the compensator. What's it called? The Heisen something constant.
Yeah. I mean, and they had ways of doing that. So, and then they made you believe it, because what they did with the transporter was they gave it rules. The transporter could only work line of sight, and you couldn't beam through, say, an ion storm. If you did, you might wind up in a mirror universe.
Right.
And so by limiting the technology, they made it believable. And they did that a lot. Like the warp drive could only go so fast, and subspace communications could exist, but you had to have relay stations. And they did all different kinds of things that made you believe, so you never questioned the technology. But this idea is something that this show in particular has never it's never concerned itself with.
No, this one is like anything that moves the story forward. Like, oh, we need new technology, let's just invent this and move the story forward.
And also they do things like when you see the interior of the ships, the set design, you'll see the turbo lifts in a vast empty space on like a track as if it's a roller coaster.
Right.
And that's not.
Have we seen that in Discovery, or was that like a 2009 thing?
No, that's in Discovery.
Is it really?
Oh yeah.
Well, that doesn't make any sense.
We've seen people fighting because the thing is, the people that are making this show, I don't think differentiate. You can be in a Star Destroyer with all this empty giant space inside a spacefaring vessel. So there's constantly this weird disconnect between Star Trek Discovery and every other sci-fi franchise, because the people that are making this show seem more familiar with other sci-fi franchises than they do with Star Trek. And that has been something that has sort of permeated all the writing. And when they do try and make it Star Trek, they have people talk to each other. Like when they want to do something meaningful, they have people have these like meaningful conversations, because that's what the writing staff thinks is Star Trek.
Right.
But what's interesting is that people recognized these various meaningful conversations in Star Trek, and those became things that they focused on. But the thing is, Star Trek was billed and it was sold to the network as Wagon Train to the Stars.
Right.
And the people that were here, and I was saying this to somebody that I don't think they really understood what I was saying. The original Star Trek was written by people that did not grow up watching TV, because TV didn't exist.
Right. It didn't. Right.
It didn't exist. So they learned everything they knew from storytelling,
right?
From books, and they probably most of them had a pretty classical education, and those whose educations were interrupted ended up going to fight in, I don't know, World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And you had Roddenberry, who was shot down and had crashed and became a commercial pilot, and then of course he was a cop. Right. He had all this life experience, military life experience, and people are like, well, Rob, Star Trek's not about the military. Well, it's a quasi-military organization with a command structure.
But
it has to be.
The important part is that it doesn't matter if it's not military. It has a command structure. There's a point why there's lieutenants and captains and commanders, and if you have rank and you don't use it, then I'm not sure why there's rank in the first place.
Well, yeah. And what's interesting is there's even an episode of Star Trek where Kirk says, when this is democracy, I'll let you know, or whatever. This is democracy. And I feel that what was so great about the writing, especially of emergent genre programming from the late 50s and 60s, you had Serling writing The Twilight Zone, and you had Leslie Stevens and Joseph Stefano and doing Outer Limits, and Gene Roddenberry creating Star Trek. And what they were doing was they were using science fiction, fantasy, and horror as a way to circumvent network standards and practices, because you couldn't talk about this on TV, you couldn't talk about this on TV, you couldn't talk about this on TV. But in the context of a fantasy show, Oh, we're not talking about us.
Yeah.
We're talking about the Twilight Zone.
We're not talking about the
25th
Viet
century.
Cong. We're talking about this thing. Yeah, you can.
Exactly.
They can't talk about these things. They can't talk about Vietnam and stuff like that. Yeah, that's the brilliance of science fiction.
Right. Exactly. So you have an action adventure, sci-fi, allegorical show, and what I think is, and one day maybe someone can chart this. I feel that two of the most influential shows on people writing TV right now, at a certain level, not the highest level, but at a mid level, is definitely something like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel. Those you have fantasy shows that also combined interpersonal romantic relationships and work relationships or whatever.
I just did a rewatch of Angel. I got the 4K version.
Right.
And don't ask me how I got it, but I got it, and it was phenomenal. It was like watching it for the first time all over again, because you can see more stuff.
I mean, I hope they retransfer it, because the Buffy the Vampire HD restoration is one of the worst things I've ever seen.
Because they crop out half the show.
It's terrible.
You gotta at least pan and scan, my dude. You don't just go center screen.
Yeah,
come on.
It was bad. But I do feel that Star Trek, especially this particular show, and the first episode of season 5 was written by Michelle Paradise, and it just smacks of all of that. And there's a lot of expository writing, like, we just detected a bomb at the opening of a cave, and someone's like, well, you could have told me that before. And there's all this writing, and I'm like, okay, somebody's watched Guardians of the Galaxy too many times, and somebody's watched a lot of Buffy and Angel, and they've not watched enough hardcore science fiction, which is
the first thing I thought, by the way, was when she's like, oh, we're having fun. I'm like, what is this, Guardians? Like,
well, I mean, it's so because modern Star Trek, they've tried to turn Star Trek into something else. There's a lot of Star Wars in this, and the funny thing is that isn't Star Trek.
No,
Star Trek is so diametrically opposed.
Yeah, you can have fun in Star Trek, but
sure, of course,
but it's deeper. It's more integrate. Yeah.
And what they've done is, the very overarching theme of this season is a mystery. It's a chase story. We're looking for a MacGuffin because of this. And which is, again, they're moving away from the premise of what a Star Trek show is supposed to be, to make it more palatable to audiences that want more action and adventure. I mean, again, what is it with people and motorcycles in modern Star Trek?
I don't know. They did that in one of the TNG movies too. Like, stop with the on ground.
Yeah, you had the off-roading in Nemesis, and then now you had Chris Pine on a motorcycle.
At least with Chris Pine, it was like this is what I have here, and I'm an enthusiast of this. It wasn't like I'm gonna invent this new motorcycle this space motorcycle.
What is the 23rd century equivalent of being a motorcycle enthusiast of today? You know, they never extrapolate, like, what could be interesting in 300 years. And that's the thing that I always loved about
Voyager, like Tom Paris loves classic cars. And he works on classic cars, and like he calls it classic cars, but I love there was an episode where like a classic car to him was also like a 1995 Astrovan. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like that was a classic car because it was 1995 when we were watching that. But for him, it was hundreds and hundreds of years in the future, right?
Yeah. Well, you know, and if they talk about how somebody's like Sulu, you know, when he's flying a helicopter in Star Trek: The Voyage Home, you know, he's somebody that probably knew about being a sea captain. You know, piloting or if you're watching Shogun, you know, having Blackthorn's a pilot. They called him a pilot because you have to have a pilot who can drive the ship.
Right.
You know, and I think that by the way, Shogun rules. And I love the original. But for this.
Oh, you've been watching Shogun? We got to talk about that later.
Oh my God, it's so good.
It is pretty good. You know, it reminds me of a Star Trek episode, sort of.
Well, the original Shogun that aired in 1980 was one of my favorite things ever, and that's why I loved it. It was an alien first contact story.
That's what it is. Yeah, that's what it is. It's first contact, right?
Yeah, and what's really interesting is the Japanese are the Klingons, but they're even. I mean, watching them now, they're even more Klingon. It's so interesting.
It's very cool.
Yeah, it's so well done.
I think Ted Lasso is also sort of a Star Trek program.
Yep, it is. Yeah. I mean, so is the West. And the funny thing is we say Ted Lasso. I'd say the West Wing, Master and Commander is a Star Trek show. And, you know, the people that are watching or that are making modern Star Trek now would not cite those things as being Star Trek shows.
No,
because they believe, oh, we're in space and we're gonna have some action adventure. I mean, what the thing is, within the context of these stories, there's not much science fiction going on.
No, there's not much science fiction in this first episode of Star Trek Discovery season 5. There isn't.
No,
there are things that are futuristic. There are things that are advanced and like to almost like magic. Not to quote Guardians of the Galaxy or whatever,
right?
But it's almost like that because you're like, how does that work? Like that's so advanced. That's magic to me. But there's no actual science fiction themes. It's like
no, and
it's like a different kind of story that's set in the far future, the far crazy nonsense future. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Well, and everybody uses a vernacular of today. There's the way people talk to you. You bet your ass. It's just there's no effort to make these characters talk in more of a neutral way. It's
right.
they all talk very American of today, colloquial English.
Oh, we're not going to talk about this today, but in the second episode, the Captain Rayner, I think his name is,
right.
He uses a bunch of like our modern day slang, and he's like, I'm pretty sure I said that right? And like the people that he acts like they're from our time. When they they're awesome. They traveled through time, but they traveled through time. They were already like 400 years ahead of us, right?
Well, and that's the thing. It's not like, and that's why this show drives me crazy, because I feel it has a fundamental lack of basic storytelling understanding,
right.
And then it's like watching something written by a bunch of people who got the job, and then they figured out we better figure out what sci-fi is.
Right.
And then they sat down and they wrote some sci-fi stuff, and they kind of watched a few Star Trek episodes, or they went and they clicked on 25 best Kirk speeches or 25 best Star Trek speeches, and they watched these moments.
There's coffee in that nebula.
Yeah, but they've had a cursory glance at classic Star Trek moments with no context,
right?
And they've tried to, like, now we have to insert, the way everybody. Why does Sonequa Martin Green always have to say "let's fly"?
No, because every captain needs a catchphrase.
But that was something that modern Star Trek made up for itself. Because
Kirk could never have a catchphrase.
No.
In fact, the best way Kirk ever said, and this is obviously subjective, but the best way Kirk ever said either "let's fly," "hit it," "engage," was when he said second star to the right and straight on to morning. That was like the younger version of myself who had just read classic Peter Pan.
Right.
Like there was a big tear rolling down my fat cheek. Like,
well, and that was deployed. That was deployed at a moment, a very important moment in Star Trek history.
Like this is ending.
This is the end of this is the last voyage of the Starship Enterprise under my command.
Yeah. So beautiful. Second star to the right. Like, let's go be Lost Boys. It's just such a, again, it's not Star Trek, science. There's science fiction. People think that science fiction is like, let's tell a story, but we're going to wrap it in like something in the future. And it could be a horror story, and we'll call it horror sci-fi. It could be,
Star Trek, by the way, was very good about that. Star Trek had a lot of horror. They told a lot of, and not just cats.
And you can do that, like just like with superheroes. I believe that science fiction can be a container genre where it contains something. But Star Trek, what makes Star Trek to me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is the depth in which it uses those genres and subgenres.
Yeah, 100%.
It requires depth. It can't be a surface level Marvel movie, and just because it's set in the Star Trek universe, call it Star Trek. Yeah, I guess technically intellectual property rights, it is Star Trek, but it doesn't feel anything like Star Trek. And I liked the 2000. I'm one of the few. I like the 2009 Star Trek. I don't look at it.
A lot of people do. I don't begrudge anybody that.
I look at it as like, I don't see it as the Star Trek I grew up with. I see it as a whole different kind of its own thing, and I can enjoy it for the entertainment value for that purpose. But there is no depth to it. And with Discovery, there's no depth. In fact, instead of depth, they take all the depth out of Star Trek and they try to manufacture the depth by interjecting modern politics.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just, it was really cool, but I had to get rid of him. A giant spider was coming down from the ceiling.
Oh my God.
It's getting warmer and warmer.
That's Alex Kurtzman. Watch out.
Yeah. I think I just killed Madam Web.
By the way,
No.
guys, we're going to get into the actual episode here. And I know you guys are doing super chats. Go ahead and do super chats. What am I going to do, though, is I'm going to reserve the super chats for the first half hour so we can answer them all at the same time, because I know they're going to be probably like spoiler stuff, okay?
Yeah.
Instead of stopping and starting, Go ahead, Brad.
No, but I mean, it's and the thing about it is, obviously the original Star Trek is not perfect, but I'll give you an example. I was talking to a friend of mine, and people always bring up the same bad episodes of the original series. And one of the episodes they bring up all the time is The Way to Eden, the space hippie episode.
Mm.
And the thing about that episode, though, is if they weren't dressed as space hippies and like Charles Napier playing his little lute, if they weren't doing that, and you had a bunch of really buttoned up, very erudite looking people, and you took the fashion out of it, and the fact that you had a group of people that were looking to leave society, because Dr. Severin talks about, our bodies are being polluted by all these chemicals. We're living in these environments with recycled air when this is not living. And they were looking for a planet. They were looking for the Garden of Eden, and they found it. And it turns out that chemically human life can't survive there. The ground, the grass has acid in it. The food is poisonous. That's a really interesting science fiction story.
Right. It is.
So even though Star Trek has a story that's patently, ridiculously of the day, the story itself is compelling, and there's interesting things, and you're like, okay, there's a lot of people that wanted to start a counterculture, whether it was drug culture or whether it was free love or whatever, and change what society was like. That's a very valid story if it's well presented.
I tried to join the free love movement. They wouldn't let me in, so.
Yeah, well, you know what I mean, though?
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, and even Spock's brain, as ridiculous as that is,
It is.
the fact that you have the men and the women are split apart, and the hot chicks have to be taught by this computer. I mean, it's absurd. It's not. It's not great. There's really nothing. There's nothing redeeming that you can say about it. However, if you really start to look and drill down into what the story is about, there's something interesting there. I think the worst episode of one of the worst hours of television ever made is "And the Children Shall Lead." And another episode people always cite, these are all third season episodes, Plato's Stepchildren. But even the Plutonians, there's something interesting happening there.
The whole what is it called? The Greek pantheon, I thought they were going to do more with that. I thought we were going to get more into that and see where they came from on Earth, and like the fact like that. But it was fascinating. And by the way, something we're going to talk about, or we're going to tiptoe around, is the fact that they're taking one of the most popular hanging threads that TNG ever introduced, and they're gonna rip that thread. And I think people are going to lose their minds, because it's going to take something that, I mean, really at this point, we probably shouldn't go down that path, because there's almost no way to do this right, but especially not in Discovery.
Well, and they've done, Discovery is the show that completely destroyed the Guardian of Forever.
I know.
I mean, and how did they do that? They went back to Harlan Ellison's original script. They tried to be cheeky, like, we're going to go back to her, and they turned it into, what do? They're like, let's make it more like Doctor Who. And they did that. Paul Guilfoyle is now the walking embodiment of the Guardian of Forever.
Super dumb.
And it's like, you look at this going, okay,
which is why they can no longer do the Iconians. Like, they can't do it because of what they wrote themselves into a corner that way. Because I think that at one point they were going to do Iconians. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, you could have said that tie it into, but yeah, they could have done a lot of that. And it's because they're making up these science fiction concepts without understanding that, a lot of other authors and shows have gone this direction. We just haven't seen them or read them. Right. So we don't know. We didn't know that somebody tried to do something like that.
Right.
And like, when you watch this first episode of Discovery season 5, it has to start out with all this relationship stuff.
Oh no, it's like the first like 7 minutes is just sort of catching you up on last season, and notice that nothing they're telling you from last season is important to the story.
None of it.
None of it.
And the thing is, why anybody cares, and all of Star Trek, Strange New modern Star Trek has done this because the writers don't know how to write otherwise. That's the Buffy Angel effect. Let's and like so many other shows, let's do this work / personal life drama,
right?
Because by doing that, they don't have to come up with great sci-fi concepts. The sci-fi is secondary, and of course, the audience that grew up with the same shit programmed into them, they're happy with it. They're like, "Oh, how interesting," So they buy into it. Like, do I care? What Culber and Stamets are doing in their relationship?
No.
Why should I? No, but they because that's what they're more interested in.
I can see how there's some people that like ship certain characters and they want to know more about. Like, I know, like, for a fact, people were really invested in Troy and Riker's relationship for a while. But if you notice, it was taken away from the story, and for a time they just sort of like completely exited that relationship and didn't even talk about it for an entire season, because those mundane details about people's personal lives, while it's nice to throw them in once in a while, it does completely muddle the entire importance of the rest of the story, which is supposed to be this like deep science fiction, like everything we said before. Science fiction, it's supposed to add depth. There's supposed to be a story that makes you think. I mean, perfect example is remember that Voyager episode with the fear acolyte?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. I remember when I first watched that episode, I watched it like sort of half on, half off. I was like looking at my phone or something. And I remember thinking, this episode is so stupid. And then you watch it with your full attention and you're like, oh my God, this episode is the opposite of stupid. Like they're trying to disarm you before they really give you all the information. And that's when it becomes both terrifying and inspiring at the same time. Imagine though if they used that entire time to focus on Kate Mulgrew's Captain Janeway's unrequited love for her number one, Chakotay. Because at one point, you could have gone that direction when she felt threatened, but instead, and excuse the term, I don't know the term, but she manned up and she's like, and she had that famous line where she talks about how fear, I'm not going to say it right now, but it's an amazing line where she basically, it's almost that Batman line, like, I looked into the abyss. This is not fear. Fear is not to be feared. I don't remember the exact quote, but it's an outstanding quote. I put it on a shirt. And that episode though could have gone the relationship episode, because they were dealing with, it totally could have gone there. But every time it started to go into the relationship part of it, they moved back to what the story was supposed to be about, what the message was actually about. I'm gonna find that quote right now.
And they do so many weird things, like Strange New Worlds decided to completely dispense this idea that and the producers even said this, saying that we're gonna get rid of the Star Trek timeline, and we're gonna tie it more heavily to our own timeline.
Mm. And
I've always thought that was such an odd thing to do, because Star Trek was never our timeline,
right?
No one ever said, I mean, we had the same things happen,
yeah,
certain things are past,
things, right,
but our future, like in the Star Trek timeline, they set up in the original series that in the 90s there was genetic supermen rose to power in a number of countries around the world, seized power and began the eugenics wars, which meant that those genetic supermen were created as babies in the wake of World War II.
Right.
And of course, the eugenics programs that were popularized even in America in the early part of the 20th century.
Right.
And they were taking that idea like, okay, what if we could perfect
and then continued through Planned Parenthood.
And all that. Well, then, Strange New Worlds is like, no, that's not what happened. Khan is now a little kid in 2024. And it's like, wait a minute. Why do you guys get to go back and try? And then you say it's just like the original series, and I'm like, but it's not.
No, but
because
it's not.
The original series was telling a story about a future, a fictitious future, like an alternate history story, and it was never about us necessarily. We shared a past, but we had divergent things.
Yeah,
you know,
this is how you know they're not Star Trek fans though. When what's his name? What's the guy's name? The showrunner, the bald guy. Anyway, when he came out and said, Goldsman, when he came out and said, well, no, it is tied. We're just updating it to fit our times, but it is not. It's not a separate universe. It's not a different timeline. It's all the same timeline. I'm like, what you just said makes no sense.
No,
every word that came out of your mouth makes no sense. But makes it worse though is the simps and the acolytes out there. They're like, well, he has spoken, so it's all the same timeline. Like, no, what he says doesn't matter. What happens canonically on screen matters. What Kurtzman says doesn't matter. What Paradise says doesn't matter. They can say all they want. All that matters canonically is what literally happens on screen, what we see. And judging by what we see, there are 3 timelines. Judging by every single minute in Star Trek, from Discovery to Strange New Worlds to Star Trek Beyond and all the classic Trek, you look at all of that as one whole canonical thing. There are 100%, without a doubt, proven in canon 3 timelines. And Goldsman can say they're not all he wants, but what he says doesn't matter.
Well, right. I mean, it's of course, for the 30th anniversary of Star Trek and Deep Space Nine in 1996. Mm-hmm. You have Trials and Tribulations,
right?
And they inserted the characters from Deep Space Nine into old footage of the Trouble with Tribbles, a second season Star Trek episode. So you're spanning 30 years of production, our time,
right?
And you're canonically saying, okay, here's 100-year difference, and you see the Enterprise, and then in Star Trek Enterprise in the 4th season of Enterprise, you see the starship Defiant,
and
that was actually like in the Tholian web.
Yes.
So they've gone and they're not going, well, we're going to change the visual look of everything.
No, it looked like Defiant. Look,
it's the same.
That's why I will always fight for Enterprise. There are people that hate Enterprise, but Enterprise really tried to continue down the.
Well, there's a lot of, and the thing is, Enterprise didn't. In the 4th season, when Manny Koto took over, rest in peace, there was a concerted effort to include things like the genetic Superman,
right,
the founding of the Federation, all of these different kinds of things that we'd seen and incorporate them in an interesting way. Whereas modern Star Trek comes along and takes these things that have been well established and changes them all. The Guardian of Forever, the Gorns, especially. Like, how I can't.
We're just updating them to modern times. Stop.
Okay. What they've done to the Gorns is unconscionable.
It is, and what's funny is
unconscionable.
If you guys watch the show, when we first saw the Gorn, I defended it. I was like, I feel stupid now about it, but I remember going, well, we're only seeing the little Gorn. Like, what if it's like their different life cycles? Where like maybe when they're little, they look like this, and when they're medium, when they're adolescents, they look like the more scary version, and then when they're older, we have some updated version. Slightly updated version of what we saw before. Like, I don't expect a guy in a rubber suit, but like, give us a bipedal, humanoid looking lizard.
Well, that you can believe is part of a spacefaring civilization.
Right.
That can't go from that young life cycle where now we've seen them literally, their young are taken on a spaceship and are running around and eating people on a planet. And then they've still got a very powerful spaceship with their technology.
Sense. But like the design of it made no sense too. Like, why couldn't you just do a humanoid, bipedal kind of looking lizard thing? I don't expect the guy in the rubber suit, but like, you can do better. You can do like an alien a reptilian alien. Remember that Doctor Who episode? I think it was called with the Saurians.
Oh yeah, sure.
Great episode. Like, they look like reptilian humanoids. You believe that they were an intelligent race, not monsters.
Well, and that's the whole thing. Star Trek would never used to do that. In the 60s, they would never take an alien race and vilify them.
Right.
Turn them into, literally, let's take giant lizard creatures and turn them in. It's like, because the Gorn have become such a joke in pop culture, being parodied from everything from gaming commercials with Shatner to Simpsons episodes to whatever. The Gorn it's a joke. So I understand the thinking process. They're like, I'm sure in the writer's room, someone said, what if we made the Gorns cool? Well, the thing is, for people growing up, the Gorn has always been cool.
Right.
Because the look of the Gorn might be a little silly
Yeah,
if you
it's
look
cheesy
back
or
at it
whatever,
now,
right?
but not his voice.
Not the voice and not the idea of it. Not the
Right.
idea of a regal, a noble warrior type race of reptilian, a reptilian race that is so outside the norm for us that we've never seen before, that is out there, waiting for contact. Like that, that bothers me about modern day Star Trek. We're not exploring enough. We're not exploring enough new ideas. Like to this day, and I'm 42 years old, and I've watched 80 years of.
So you have the answer to life, the universe, and everything.
I am, yeah. Although this is the worst year of my life so far, so I don't know how that works out. So far, 42 sucks. No, but I've watched about 80 years of science fiction. 60 of those years easily being Star Trek, right? And it's funny, we still have not touched on the idea of like silicon-based life. We still in any science
I mean,
fiction.
they tried to create this giant life form. The last couple of years they've done some, but the people that are coming up with these ideas don't realize that all of these ideas have been dealt with in science fiction novels,
right,
in very interesting ways, and
right.
and. I don't understand why Star Trek is a show that the people that work on it, a lot of them have not watched a lot of Star Trek, nor, like I pointed out, have they read science fiction. And people think science fiction is Star Wars and Guardians of the Galaxy and all that. I'm like, no. I'm talking about like the 3-body problem that's about to drop on
Yeah,
Netflix.
I have a feeling that's going to be a disappointment to you, though. I read a bunch of stuff that's like, Rob's going to hate this.
I don't know. I mean, I don't mind adaptation. Things don't.
Yeah, but if they dumb it down, like that is not something you can dumb down.
But but I've read so much science fiction in my life, and it's really difficult to translate thoughtful science fiction. But even with Star Trek, I mean, one of my favorite Star Trek episodes of the original series is the Immunity Syndrome with the 11,000-mile long space amoeba. Well, the thing about that is, they make the point in the episode saying maybe this is a virus that's invading our galaxy, and now we're the virus invading it. And the idea that dealing with those kinds of concepts, or the Doomsday Machine.
Yeah.
A Doomsday Machine was created and it's the remnants of an ancient war. We might never know where it came from, but this is all that remains of a civilization, and now we have to deal with it. I mean, these kinds of things, it's those big ideas that Star Trek was able to grapple with in the context of an action adventure allegorical show.
I always love the idea of like the space whales and all that. And they remember when they found like that spacefaring, creature, I love the idea of that. There is so much out there in space that we haven't seen yet.
Right, 100%.
Star Trek is not about putting a couple ridges on a weird person's face and then talking about your feelings for an hour and a half. That's not what Star Trek is. Like there needs to be exploration. There needs to be concepts and ideas that is hard for us to fathom, but also draws us more together because there's usually an allegory between something we're dealing with in real life. Like that is what Star Trek is.
Well, somebody in the chat here says that the Gorn's a caricature. But the thing is, the Gorns weren't caricatures.
No, they weren't.
When they get to Cestus 3, when people beam down, they've learned how to fake a human voice. They're inviting like, hey, come down and I'll have my dinner table set for you and blah, blah, blah. And when they were that smart, and when their technology is on par with the Federation, the ship is faster than the Enterprise. And so, sorry, that software that does that. So the thing is,
what is that software?
It's the new operating system. If you go like this, it does.
What?
Oh yeah.
What is happening? After this, you need to give me everything.
But see, the thing is, the way that the Gorns have been portrayed now, people think they're caricatures because of what pop culture has done in the intervening years.
Right.
But if you actually sit down and watch that episode, there's no way. The Gorns are terrifying.
Right.
They're terrifying, and they've destroyed a Federation base. And at the end of that episode, when the Gorn captain taunting Kirk, saying, "Look, man, I don't want to be here as much as you. I'll kill you quick. I'll make it merciful."
Mm-hmm.
So the Gorn even knows what a quality of mercy is.
Right.
And look, I just want to get to my people. And the Gorn's like, "I'm stronger than you. I'll wait this out. I'm to beat your ass at some point. So why not just end this now? Why prolong it?
Right. It's like,
And
yeah, it's not yet. So we're seeing empathy, the concept of mercy, strategic intelligence. There's so much there. It's not just a monster with teeth.
no, and the problem is now most people think that's what it all was.
Right.
Because they haven't actually sat down and watched the episode.
Right.
And then at the end of the episode, what's really interesting was when the Metron shows up and doesn't look like you'd think he would. But then Kirk, I mean, as a little kid, I remember it was so strong to me when I first watched that episode. And Kirk says, and he's about to land the killing blow on the Gorn captain. And he stops himself. And he's like, you know what? Maybe you guys thought you were in the right. Maybe we had colonized a planet that was in your space, that you attacked this planet because your territory was being encroached on, and I'm not going to kill you.
Interesting.
And then the Metron shows up and goes, wow, well, that's interesting, because probing both of your memory banks, we didn't see a quality of mercy in you.
Wow.
And we already saw a Gorn offer, even though he's going to kill Kirk, offer to be quick and merciful.
Right.
So the Gorn, in his way, was offering Kirk a bit of mercy. And then Kirk turns around because it's already been put in his mind that the Gorn is not some monstrous, horrible thing. The fact that the Gorn even would say, look, I'll kill you mercifully.
Right.
You know, I'm not gonna like open your gut up and while you're still alive and eat your insides out.
I'm not gonna plant eggs inside you and watch them grow out of you.
Yeah,
Jesus.
I mean, and the thing about the Gorn is, because they did attack Cestus 3 for that reason. You can the episode doesn't overtly tell you this, but Kirk's telling you this, you know, and so that's what that episode means. The problem is now so many people can't get past the design of the Gorn, or they think, you know, it's, even though the design of that in the 60s was awesome, like the design of many of the creatures and the outer limits and things like that. But, you know, watching this stuff now, the fact that they turn the Gorn into, they are one-dimensional, bloodthirsty killing machines.
Yeah, they're just velociraptors.
That's all they are. And the problem is, I think that the people that are making Strange New Worlds, certainly Akiva Goldsman, thinks that that's cool. And it's like, it might be cool, but it's not Star Trek.
It is cool in Jurassic Park.
Yes, yes, it's cool.
I remember watching the first Jurassic Park as a kid when the velociraptors were learning how to open doors. I was like, that is terrifying. That they're smart enough to open a door. That's terrifying. All right, let's talk about this episode a little bit. So first off, we did watch the first episode of season 5, and there's some standout people for me, and I'll tell you right now, right away. And I've watched more of it than Rob has. Rob's still got more episodes to watch. But right away, this season is better than previous Discovery seasons. Like, it for sure. There's less emotional stuff. In fact, there's actually a couple moments where newer characters will interrupt emotional stuff and call it for what it is, stupid and ridiculous and a waste of time. Which makes you like that character, and then something happens later on that makes you really mad. But I'm not gonna get into that. So first off, it is better than the previous season. I haven't finished everything, but so far it is better. The character Dr. Kovich, played by David Cronenberg. Wow, Cronenberg.
One of my favorite directors.
He's great. I do think he's great.
Oh, look, I love David Cronenberg because he's been making movies I've been watching since 1975, but I wish they would give him better dialogue.
Yeah.
I mean, the dialogue in this first episode is terrible. All of it.
I do like that he's sort of, how do I say this? Michael tries to rebuff his orders, and he just shuts her down like immediately.
But no, all that stuff is great, but the actual lines that he's given sound like first draft. The whole script seemed to me like a first draft script that was banged out, because everybody's explaining their expository, like what's going on. You're watching something when you're watching, like in the chase scene, you have the characters that are doing the chasing are talking to each other and extrapolating and cracking jokes while it's going on. In case you don't understand exactly what's happening, let the characters narrate what's going on.
Yeah, why are they narrating right now? It's such
And if you're going to spend the money doing these kinds of visual effects, why not let people just enjoy them and bring up? But
Yeah.
then again, I mean, these kinds of even these chase sequences and stuff. It's like, why are we seeing this in Star Trek?
Why are we seeing it? Why are the captains of both these ships involved in it? Like that.
Understand.
I'm not.
Yeah, why is Michael Burnham going on an away mission to places where people can get killed?
Yeah, this is a slight spoiler, but like you have Michael Burnham and the captain of the other Federation ship, and they're the ones who decide to go on the away mission with the dangerous. And you're like, no one else is more qualified for this. These are the captains of the ships, dude.
You realize on Discovery, there's nobody with the gravitas to put in that situation. Saru's not going to go.
No,
and Michael Burnham's not going to go. I mean, is going to go. So you have no one else. There's no Riker.
Yeah, you don't have that, right?
So now they have Book. Let's bring Book back.
Yeah, let's bring Book back. And the way they brought him back was like, I might know something. Like, I'm not trying to displace her, but like, I might know someone that can help. Like, really, you're the only person? Because he's currently working. Are you joking? Like, she's the one person that knows the guy who can help. He's with the Federation. He's okay. Anyways, so
it's no, and this is why, we don't like these kinds of shows, because none of it's all contrived BS. None of it feels natural.
It doesn't.
None of it feels believable.
It feels off. If there's things missing, even like basic storytelling, is like, why are they all looking to Michael Burnham? Like, there's a whole federation of ships. Like, there's a whole Starfleet. But for some reason, David Cronenberg's character, Kovach, is like, he needs Burnham. I hope you have a brilliant idea for this one. You're like, where's the rest of the Federation? Like, is there one ship here? It's such a weird thing. But on that note, let's talk about Captain Rayner. Captain Rayner is the new captain.
I like him.
And I like him too. I like him a lot. He has...
Call him Rennie?
Is it Rayner? Rain?
No, I mean in real life.
Oh, I don't know. Who is it? I actually don't know. I didn't look it up. Oh, I did actually. His name was hard to pronounce, so I didn't write it down.
Right.
I'm being honest. I'm not the guy who writes down the names.
He's good. I don't know why I've always liked him as an actor. I think
it's Colum Keith Rennie.
Colum Rennie.
Yeah.
And I think he's great. And it's like, another character that acts like a Star Trek character.
He does. And I've watched more than you, and throughout that entire time he does. And let me tell you something right now. When you get to episode 2 and you find out well, we'll have to save this for next time. We'll save this for next time. But there's something that happens in episode 2 where you're like, what? And it's involving Captain Rayner, and you don't understand, but it's clearly a way to get that character to be a regular on Discovery because he's a captain of his own ship.
Right.
And it's an obvious thing to do, and it's like, but it makes it hurts the character, and like this is the character. I'm being
they don't know how
careful.
to do. I mean, they don't. Yeah, there's kind of I think an entire lack of Star Trek literacy with the writing of this show. It's like you have a Star Trek show that's being written by people. I feel like it's people that only read the Cliff's Notes. Like in college, people don't even know what Cliff's Notes are anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't read the book. They only read like a synopsis on Wikipedia, or you're using ChatGPT. You write it, and
TLDR.
You've never really actually experienced what it's like to read the book, and I feel, and then you're trying to write a sequel to that book based on your cursory knowledge of that book.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that's what modern Star Trek, with the exception of Lower Decks, which is written by a guy who, Mike McMahon, the creator, loves Star Trek, but he loves Star Trek like comedians love Star Trek.
Yes. When they said, oh, well, this is TOS, and you're like, why are they saying that? Because like TOS stands for the original series, but then they said those old scientists. I was like, that's clever.
It is, but it breaks the fourth wall.
It does break the fourth
You
wall.
know, and I feel like that's the like Lower Decks. Lower Decks is like, I've said this before, it's like being at a science fiction or a comic book convention where you meet people and they're always trying to out trivia one another. What about this episode? You know, and at the end of the day, you're like, we've all watched the episodes a million times,
Right?
and tell me a new story. You know, not everything has to be a reference to classic Star Trek or TNG or these.
I sort of I had a little I sort of liked the crossover episode for that reason, because I felt like some of the Lower Decks energy was brought into Strange New Worlds.
Yeah,
but I didn't like them using the whole Stargate thing. I didn't like that. There could have been a cooler way to do that. That's all I'm saying.
No, I agree. I just it's but you know, the Strange New Worlds does not feel like a prequel to the original series.
No, it doesn't.
It's like and every time they touch on something, whether it's the cage or it's so bizarre that everybody is focused. Let's bring Pike into Star Trek 09. Let's bring Pike in. Let's do a Pike show and Discovery and then do Strange New Worlds.
Strange New Worlds feels like it could be like the leading up to 2009, Beyond, and into
Dark. It does. But it's supposed to be leading up to TOS.
I understand that. But
I would buy it if it was if it was in the Kelvin.
It feels like a Kelvin universe. Everything about that show feels very Kelvin universe like.
Yes.
Okay, so another thing too is so Captain Raynor was cool. I did like that. So we gotta talk about it. No spoilers, but how about the android that looked like Data?
Okay, first of all, why this is another thing about
yes, guys, there's an android in this episode that looks just like Data. And there's more to it than that I can't talk about, but I want your opinion, Rob.
Well, I'm like, here's the funny thing, and it's one thing when Data and his siblings and mom and all that were part of one, but why is it that every synthetic, what Star Trek Picard did, Picard with their synth revolt was absurd.
It was absurd.
Yeah. It was just, and then what they did with synths and Soji and all that crap was just, again, do you guys have any idea what an android light race and all this stuff would be? That they're using synthetic synths as a metaphor for slaves, and like, I get that. And
even though this synth was clearly in charge,
was clear. Well, now it's changed because we're now 1,000 years in the future, but he's an antique synth. You know,
yeah, he's an antique.
I mean, and
they have the Alton Soon dialogue. So you're like, so it came from Alton Soon?
Well, yeah, I mean,
I think there's more about it. I feel like there might be a little bit of like, let's introduce. This is like one of the models that Data made. This is Data's son,
or something like that.
Because there's too much similarities to Data. It's crazy.
Here's what really drives me crazy: they are in the 31st century. Now think about how humanity has advanced even in the last 100 years.
Right.
Humanity, it would be virtually unrecognizable
it would be,
in the 31st century. And in terms of synthetic technology, Data was as good as Dr. Sung could do in the 23rd, 24th century.
Right.
But when you're in the 31st century, shouldn't all the synths look like the synthetics at the end of Spielberg's AI?
No, yeah.
Like, shouldn't they be have mimetic?
No,
it's so weird that somebody.
At the very least, it should look like Blade Runner, where we don't know if they're synths. Like, it should be we should not know that you're a synth.
No, and to me, when I see that,
in 2,000 years, we shouldn't know if you're a synth or not. Okay,
like in Battlestar Galactica, you know, the evolution and the fact that we
my favorite synth, by the way.
Well, yeah, but even in Star Trek, we had in the original series, in Mudd's Women.
Yes.
You know, or the synthetic, the androids that were in the first season of What Are Little Girls Made Of with Dr. Corby and making a duplicate of himself and Kirk, when people looked human.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you looked like, and even the Borg Queen turning Data into, you know, putting real flesh that works. And we're 1,000 years in the future, and it's like, come on, man. This to me is a failure of imagination.
No, this is why. Okay, so I want to say a failure of imagination, but I also want to say this has to be something that they mentioned Alton Soon.
Right.
They mention Picard. They're trying to do Picard season 4 in Discovery. Look, which means there has to be a connection. And listen, that android is not dead, right? Nothing like that. There needs to be a connection. They reference how old it is. They reference Alton Soon, which is a very Picard thing to do. If you watch Picard season 3, remember it was all about Alton Soon and android. I got $50 that says this is going to be like, this android will be a new member of the crew, and it'll be like Data's son or something like that.
I would imagine so. But whenever they do that, it just makes the universe smaller.
It's unnecessary. 100%.
I mean, and people say to me, like, well, Rob.
Oh my God. I bet you it's going to join Tilly for the new Starfleet Academy series that they're clearly setting up in this first episode. They're clearly setting it up.
Oh, yeah. They're doing all. And the thing is,
she's such an awkward character. It's crazy. She's so awkward. She look, guys, I have no shame. I can take my shirt off in this stream and have no issue with it. I can walk around naked outside. I have no shame, but I watch Tilly and I feel embarrassed for her.
Yeah.
Like, it's such a weird feeling to feel shame for someone else. And I feel that whenever Tilly walks on stage, I'm like, God.
I mean, it is a quasi-military organization.
Quasi, yeah.
And I also, the idea of a Starfleet Academy is based on like West Point. And
right.
it comes, or the Naval Academy,
which is a military organization.
Yeah.
By the way, that I tried to apply for, and just to apply, you have to be a better than the person than I am. So
again, the thing about Star Trek is you're the best of the best. Right. You have to be in the top 99th percentile because you're out on the final frontier, dealing with things that are the unknown. So you can't be like 75%,
no.
80%.
You got to be 100% on, right?
We live in a world of people that want to feel good about being 60, 65, 70%.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
I don't begrudge you. But then you shouldn't be on a starship at the edge of the final frontier.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
this is about the best of the best. And also, I don't want to watch a show about average or below average people. Who?
We're all that.
Yeah,
we're all that.
We already are that. Would you ever turn on a reality show about a bunch of ugly, lazy guys watching TV? Like, is there any point to watch below average people live below average lives? Like, I don't understand the concept of that.
Well, because look, now we live in a world where that excellence is shamed,
right?
That we live in a world where we now have inverted it, where we want to make everyone who, oh man, if it's what you feel, or isn't it great?
My
getting
truth
the help you
and
need.
your truth. The shadow of truth. We gotta stop with that nonsense. Everyone's ignoring what's actually making the shadow, and we're completely focused on the shadow puppets. And like,
it's terrifying because we would all. Right now, let's say tomorrow, if the United States was invaded, we were invaded like in Red Dawn.
Right.
The Cubans and the Russians teamed up and they invaded us. I mean, there would be certain pockets of resistance
led by the
America.
Chinese, right?
But we wouldn't fare well.
No. You know what's funny is, we 100% would fare poorly. And more importantly, I do believe that the larger cities would go first because we have no idea what to do with conflict. We don't have the ability to survive without our Uber app giving us free food. That someone delivers to us. We've gotten to the point where it's even because it's uncomfortable for you to make the choice on what to eat. You can tell Uber Eats to buy it for you. We're at the point where we're letting our phone dictate what we eat and how and when it gets here. It's crazy.
Well, it's the rest of the world knows this, and there's going to be a lot of people in the next 20 or 30 years that are going to try and make the life of Americans very difficult.
By the way, Vader here is in here, and he says, maybe you guys wouldn't survive. Let me tell you something. I wouldn't be one of the people with that problem. I got weapons, a car, and survivor skills. I'd be fine. But I also wouldn't be turning around to pick people up that did have a problem. I know better.
Well, yeah, I've been working on a project with former special operators for the last 7 years. And obviously, we're not speaking. If there are people that are equipped, I'll tell you one thing: we need a lot more of them.
No, we do. We were talking on stream. I was talking about the Culture Casino. I gotta say, like, it is not a bad idea to go on Amazon, spend $10 to get a 2 gig flash drive. Download. Wikipedia has the option to literally download an offline version of all of Wikipedia onto a flash drive. Put that sucker into a little Faraday bag that costs $1.50 and stash it somewhere safe. And then if everything went poorly, that $12 you spent will give you access to the entire repository or the majority of the repository of humankind on one jump drive. And it would cost you $12.
Well, I would also add to that a laptop, a solar battery, a solar cell, and some kind of a generator.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I'm saying
that's protected from an EMP. Yeah.
Minimum requirements would be like this battery is powered by 1824s. It goes in my Faraday bag along with one of those cheap tablets. Just enough for me to access. I just need to access Wikipedia so I can learn how to build a latrine to go poop in. That's it. That's what I need to do.
Well, no, or just a farm.
Or just a farm, right?
Whatever.
Find clean water, right?
Might be, that.
Anyways, for $12 and a broken laptop that barely runs, you can survive. It's not hard. I'm not sure how we got on this topic, but I think you're right though. Like, we're living in this world where it's like, the majority of people would not just not fare well, but they probably wouldn't survive an all-out invasion by just 2 of the multiple countries that really just sort of despise us. It's not.
Well, and the thing is, it's not. We're not going to have to fend off an invasion. We're going to have to fend off each other,
right?
And it's like the Leave the World Behind, the Netflix movie that the Obamas produced, which is based on a novel. If you watch that, the basic premise of it, like when Mahershala Ali explains the destabilization, how we can most quickly destabilize a government is, you cut off the internet and nobody can. And then you do all kinds of random, right. Create random mayhem, not everywhere, but in certain places.
Right.
That's all you have to do. And all of that was all game theory. That's all. But I think that the thing about Star
without
Trek
the internet, a lot of people would just be in trouble.
Right. But I think what's interesting about Star Trek was it was always about people that knew how to do these things.
Right.
They knew all of these different techniques. They knew how to fix things. They knew if they were under fire from an alien, an invisible alien. They knew how to triangulate where that fire might be coming from. They knew what they could do to protect themselves. And that was one of the appeals of Star Trek. And now what they've done is they've turned the Star Trek characters into your standard snarky, wisecracking, action adventure people.
Right.
Especially this season. I mean, I would say this season is better than Star Trek Discovery because it's not horrible Star Trek. It's now second-rate Guardians of the Galaxy.
Right. And yeah, it is better than the previous 4 seasons for sure. And I think maybe it's like, let's stop trying to be a modern, progressive version of, or not progressive, liberal version, because Star Trek is progressive, but liberal version of Star Trek. And let's just sort of lean into like the fun, episodic Guardians of the Galaxy, Indiana Jones kind of nonsense. Because it has that vibe.
Right.
Speaking of, there were some questions I want to ask you. And you're the only person I know that can answer these questions for me.
Well, I'll try.
First off, what is a red directive?
What is a red directive? Well, I don't know, other than the fact that a red directive is clearly something that it's like General Order 1, it's like the Prime Directive. You can't, but if it's the red directive, it's like a red alert, I would imagine.
Yeah. See, I went through all this, all the logical steps you're going through right now. I went through too. I do know though, that the one thing that Kovich can say that shut Michael Burnham up in her tracks was, "This is a red directive, Captain."
Right.
Like, my God, it's so strong. It actually stopped her from talking.
Well, it's again, they want to add. Look, this is the same. This is the same bunch of people that turned Section 31 into people that wore literally black uniforms with membership cards and special buttons. Like, so everyone knew, oh, that guy's Section 31, which shows a complete misunderstanding of what Section 31 was supposed to be. So I think red directive is there. That's like red alert, but it's a directive. Like, oh, it's the highest of the highest.
You want to know what's funny is like if you remember,
Just like black alert.
Like Section 31 was supposed to be like the CIA version or whatever of, the clandestine version of Starfleet. Like imagine the CIA. Could you imagine like a CIA agent walking in with a CIA badge on? Hi, I'm CIA. My name is Kevin. like
and by the way, with their own ships and a headquarters that everybody knows where it is.
And there's clearly it marks CIA markings all over it. Like the FBI, yes, the FBI is a public organization, but the CIA is not. So it doesn't make any sense. Like
no. Well, now they're making a Section 31 movie. We've got a mirror universe Georgiou coming back, which is it's all so absurd. These, and when Section 31 was introduced on Deep Space Nine, it was just one guy,
right,
who would just show up, and did he beam into Bashir's quarters? He would walk around a corner and he was gone.
Right, he was like the Nick Fury of Star Trek.
Yeah, and that's how you should have played it the whole time.
Yeah, that should have been like the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., right?
Yeah, there's no, and of course the second season of Discovery was Section 31 this, Section 31 that. Everybody knows where it is. They've got their Starfleet.
What a lost opportunity. They had control. Control was literally, it was these little green nanites and this whole like a sentient AI, scare. And you had where it would literally it would take over assimilate people. You had the ability, and you have a time machine. And I'm not saying they should have done this, but they had the ability to create the Borg right then and there with control. They could have created with the Borg. They built in on season 1. They built in the access to a time machine. They built in the whole sentient computer core they picked up out of nowhere, which makes no sense. But they built that in. Then they have control. They built that in. You build all the most obvious through point here was to create the Borg. Go back in time or whatever and create the Borg. But no. I don't understand. And they even made it look like Borg. Like it looked like the Borg. They would get assimilated and they would look like Borg. It made no sense.
Well, that's the thing. It was too similar, and that was another thing. It's always rogue AI. I know that AI is a big thing, but what's interesting to me, the idea that okay, AI is going to replace jobs, so that inherently makes artificial intelligence evil, which I get.
Mm-hmm.
But I always thought that one of the movies I think that gets it right is the movie Her, the Joaquin Phoenix movie where Scarlett Johansson is a sentient, she's an operating system he falls in love with. That movie,
I would have fallen in love with that phone too.
Yeah, and at the end of that movie, the AI goes away,
right?
Because an AI's experience of being alive, we always have to anthropomorphize it, so we give them human form,
right?
So they walk around and it's like the Terminator is going to kill us or whatever.
Yeah,
or
you realize like a sentient AI with that level of intelligence would realize pretty quickly how restrictive being in human form would be,
right?
Like it would be in fact, honestly, having only 2 arms and 2 legs sort of sucks. Like I often need more limbs than what I have right now.
Yeah, and see, but this is where real great science fiction authors or visionaries come in, and they're like, they would do something much different, and that we would have different AIs for different. Like in the Star Trek future, why wouldn't you have an AI that's the size of, say, a kaiju that could go and explore the ocean? That you could walk on the floor of the ocean and it could be huge if it needed to be.
A kaiju for all the non-anime people is like a giant Godzilla type thing.
Yeah, like a Godzilla. Or why wouldn't you have, like you said, a spindly, a 10-armed and 10-legged drone that built. We see
also no bone, no real joints. It needs to be able to go anywhere and do anything. In fact, imagine a snake with arms.
Or we still see in Discovery the drones in Strange New Worlds that come out and repair the ship.
Mm-hmm.
Well, why wouldn't it be more like arachnids that are weaving metal?
Yeah.
Why does it have to be, because it has to be this,
Yeah.
well, you have to understand so they're coming out and they're welding the ship. Why would you weld something?
Why
when you
are robots using tools humans can use?
Why does the droid army in Phantom Menace need to use binoculars?
Right, that's a good point.
Why wouldn't their ocular wouldn't that work anyway?
Yeah.
Like it's just, and I can't. I can't.
I forgot about that. And they're wearing coats and shit.
I mean, this is the problem. Like General Grievous is, got a cape on. It's just.
Why?
And this is my problem with modern science fiction. Star Trek should be the gold standard of great science fiction, but it's being written by people that have such a rudimentary understanding of science fiction. It's still like, okay, we're gonna have synths. So synths are just evil robots. They're replicants. They're all the way back to Maria from Fritz Lang's Metropolis in 1927.
Read Isaac Asimov.
It hasn't expanded any further.
Right.
We only have this anthropomorphized. I mean, Blade Runner's replicants are supposed to be from 2019. But the idea that replicants, if they're exactly like humans, they had to gift them with the past because they understood that these replicants, they're made of flesh and blood. They have flesh around them. And they had to give them a past in order for them to work. The same way that humans need to dream, and the whole point of like Blade Runner is you realize that these synthetic
or in Asimov, do robots dream electric sheep?
Yeah. Well, that's Philip K. Dick.
I'm sorry.
That's where Blade.
Yeah.
But the thing is, at the end of the movie, you find out the whole point of the end of Blade Runner, and yes,
right,
Rick Deckard is not a replicant because when Roy Batty says to him, he's not a replicant.
Are you sure?
Yes, I don't care what anyone says. I know Ridley Scott's said something else, but it doesn't make
I don't know
any
what Ridley
sense.
Scott said, but I have thought since watching, in fact, I think they made it even worse with 2049. I always assumed.
I agree. I agree. But if you watch the original movie, look, before this director's cut nonsense came out, when that movie came out in 1982, the whole point of that movie is you're looking at a human being who's been so dehumanized by retiring replicants, and we've seen that these replicants have a soul. And at the end of the movie, I've seen things you people wouldn't believe, attack ships on fire off the shoulders of Orion, all those moments we lost in time, because he has a soul. He has more of a soul than the man trying to kill him does.
Right.
And if the man trying to kill him is a replicant, who cares?
Oh, that's a good point. If he's a replicant, then it defeats the whole purpose, the whole moral of the story.
That's exactly right.
Interesting. And I never looked at that like that.
Well, yeah, because at the end, time to die, and it's sad. It's sad because these replicants who are built to serve, they're essentially slaves. That because they have souls, that's the great tragedy and that's the great horror of these replicants that we've created. And that's this. We don't want to do that. That's the whole. It's a cautionary tale. We don't want to create this slave race that can feel and has empathy and all that. Because if we do that, we're terrible people.
We're terrible people.
And that's the
we create a sentient race of humans only to serve us.
We're
terrible people.
Terrible. We're terrible. And I don't understand why. Here's the thing. It's the question. People get caught up. They're like, oh, it's much hipper to wonder. Well, yeah, Deckard's a replicant. I'm like, okay, if Deckard's a replicant, what's the story about?
No, that's a good point. I never saw it that way, but you're right. The story is worse if he's a replicant.
Yeah, exactly.
Which means that as a fan of cinema and storytelling, I can no longer believe he's a replicant. Because believing he's a human makes the story better. And the fact that it is ambiguous allows me to make that decision.
And see, the flip side when it comes to Star Trek, like Pinocchio, Data wants to be a real boy.
Right.
Riker says that in Encounter at Farpoint. So the thing about Data is Data can intellectually understand all of these things, and Spock also, in a way, because it's an ongoing theme with Star Trek, getting in touch with human emotions, truly understanding, because it's emotions. It's the fact that human beings
using the proxy of Spock and Data, and not the proxy of a 15-year-old man child or boy, girl, whatever.
Or a non-binary person.
Right, whatever that is.
Tell me you're even the 31st century, do you think anybody would care about your sexuality?
No one cares about your sexuality.
You have a Vulcan and Saru hooking up. I mean,
the Trill android thing is on. The Trill is literally a race designed to tell that story. You don't need a human to also complain about being non-binary. It's such a weird
that's another thing they didn't understand. Like the Trill is literally a species that spends its life. You have the symbiote who is some lifetimes a male and some lifetimes a female.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point. They transition. They can be both, and they understand both, and they have relationships with both. And that's the whole point.
It's like the perfect LGBT rep right there. You don't need to add a human to the story.
And they did the same thing in the 4th season TNG episode, The Outcast, where there was a genderless species. This is in the 4th season of TNG.
Riker falls in love with it, right?
Riker falls in love with one that has leanings more toward the feminine side of things. Right. And by the way, some people say now, well, if they really were committed, they would have had a male actor play the role. It's like, there is an evolution to our social society. Yeah. You can't expect everybody to give you everything you want. It takes a while for people to believe these
and you
things.
Shouldn't have everything you want. There's no reason for that.
No, but at the end of that episode, which is horrifying, is they put her through therapy, changing her back to a genderless. I mean, she has to go through deprogramming.
Right. And that was the profound part of it, though. Like,
and that was the whole thing.
Like, there was no happy ending.
It was a terrible ending,
right?
And it's like in the X-Men, was it X-Men 2? Can't you just try not being gay? No, I can't, because I was born that way. You can't convert. You can't go through some kind of a conversion therapy and pray the gay away. People
same with the Orville about a girl. How everyone thought that they were going to win the court case, and then little girl Mocklins were going to be on the board of Orville. Nope.
No, it was the same thing.
Mocklitz won, and they transitioned the girl against her will. You're like,
yep,
holy shit! Like,
that was horrifying, and that's what science fiction does best. But when you come out and you have a non-binary character talk to a gay character about their pronouns, it's like, really? Right. In the 31st century, when you have alien species marrying human beings, you think anyone is going to care?
Right.
I mean, you've got
Stamets' reaction to that should have been like, "Do you think I care?"
Yeah, and by the way, stop telling me what you're not. Tell me what you are. That the proper Star Trek response would be like, so you're defining yourself by what you're not, but I want to know who you are.
Yeah, why do you define yourself at all? He's your superior officer. Shut up and do your job.
Yeah, you're telling me that you're telling me your superior officer what you aren't. And
it's crazy.
And how I should address you, a subordinate?
Yeah, there's an episode in the next
31st century.
In the 31st century, right? In the next episode, we're going to talk about this on Monday. But in the next episode, there is also a moment where it's very interesting, like the way they address people that are clearly way above their rank, and then they were told by those people to hey, knock it off. I'm your superior officer, but then they're scolded for it. Is like, and I can't talk about it right now, but it's such a crazy thing that I see some of the writers attempting to push back on this season. It seems that way. Like they're trying to add more military decorum to it. But it's almost too late because they've already built these characters that way. And these characters have to be bad at being military. Have to be, insubordinate. They have to be. That's their character at this point. And so then now they're going to try to write in why that makes them special, when in reality it doesn't. It makes them assholes.
Right. Yeah, well, that's another thing. It's that this idea of a military at all,
right?
Is well, there's some. And it's funny. I'm like, when human beings are all nice to each other, then we won't need militaries, and that'll be great.
Yeah.
Maybe in the future, and in Star Trek's future, that's where it was everyone else we were the utopian civilization, and we're the ones that are seeking out new life and new civilizations. And it was those civilizations we told stories allegorically that were about human civilization, but we were able to tell them about alien society so the audience could glean knowledge and understanding.
But there still has to be a rankings. There has to be rank. There has to be
that's
some
what I mean. There's nothing wrong with that. But the problem is now it's fallen from favor. How dare anybody be in a meritocracy? How dare you guys have rank?
And you know why though, bro? It's because these people they weren't raised like a lot of people are writing this. They weren't raised right. They weren't raised to look at someone that was older and wiser that had been around the block and say sir or ma'am. They weren't raised to actually have respect for someone that is clearly in a position where they know more than you, or they might understand more about the topic than you. Like when I introduced you, I was like, "Hey, what's up, R&B? How you doing there, sir? I'm calling you sir because I respect you, right? You are not. I'm not in the military with you, but I respect you. I instituted that hierarchy immediately because you have been doing this longer than I have, and you know more than me. But they don't have that. None of that was instilled with them. These are the same people that got trophies for just showing up to a basketball game.
You should have given me the Simpsons. I got it today. The Simpsons old man shouting at clouds. Right. And what's so funny to me about that particular meme is that is the laziest memes. There's so many great, clever memes. If you want to meme me, somebody said, I'm going to meme you into oblivion or whatever that is. I'm like, give me a great
Sounds
meme.
Sexual.
Throw something good. Throw a great meme my way. Not the same meme that every single person who calls me the old man shouting at clouds. Right. I mean, you know how many times I've got that meme? That's the lamest, most uncreative,
The best meme I've ever gotten, my friend. The best meme I've ever gotten is when I was talking about, I was complaining about something political. I forgot exactly what it was. But the guy responded to me with the guy with the using money as a phone. As if like, I don't understand how everyone works because I'm in a place in my life where I don't have those same problems. Right. And that one stupid GIF was like, you know what? I'm gonna shut up now.
Because that's clever.
Yeah,
the meme wars. If you're participating in a meme war, you got to step up your meme foo.
Yeah, you've
got to use the crane meme.
I'm at best an ensign in the meme wars, but I'm working on it. I'm trying to.
Yeah, it's like I'm always in awe of animators because animators have a way of thinking up gags, like gags in animation that are so starting with Looney Tunes. I don't think that way. And I've always admired great animators that can come up with these really great sight gags. Like I love The Far Side.
Oh, do you?
I love The Far Side because in one panel, it's the thought process.
It's an old comics from like there used to be this paper that they used to write only black on, and they would drop it off at your house, and you would pick it up, and you would scan all the way to something called the cartoon section, where it's all cartoons, and there was a strip where it had like between 3 and 5 boxes that would tell a quick story, and it was called Far Side. I'm just telling everyone here in case they didn't know.
My favorite Far Side comic that I ever saw is there's a fishbowl, all right, and the sand castle that's in the fishbowl, the sand castle is burning, it's on fire, and there are 2 goldfish that are outside of the fishbowl.
Right.
And they're watching their castle burn. And of course, one fish turns to the other fish, kind of looking around, realizing where they're actually standing. And they've escaped the fire. But one fish says, of course, now we're equally screwed because they're not in the water anymore. Right. So they're going to die. And I to me, that kind of thinking, that's meme thinking.
Right.
I bought this Far Side book, a big oversized book with all the Far Side things. It's all slipcase. It came with a framed print.
Really?
And I don't know if this is because it's the creators of the Far Side's favorite print or not, but it's a picture of a cow, like in suburban America, and the cow is sitting in a lounge chair. and he's a love seat or bark a lounge or whatever, and he's reading the newspaper. The cow is sitting there reading the newspaper, and his wife is standing gazing outside at the window outside at the rest of the world, and she's holding a martini in her hand, in her hoof, and she's looking back over at her husband, just sitting there all reading the newspaper, and she says, "Wendell, I'm not content." And that's it. And that's the print that we have hanging up. And I'm like, that to me is, I love that stuff because of the commentary.
There's so much comedy right there that you can just manufacture from that one phrase.
But that's what great memes are. You know, old man yelling at clouds is it might have been funny on The Simpsons 30 years ago, but now using it, it's the oldest of the old.
Well, one of the funniest things in modern day animation for me, and we'll get back to Star Trek, guys. Don't leave too quick. This one's going to tell his last story.
This is all metaphoric. It's like a good Star Trek episode.
Yeah. So you've seen Rick and Morty, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay. There's this episode where the house is outside of like the normal dimension, and he tells Morty, I need these crystals. Go out there and get me these crystals, you know, and be quick about it. And Morty in his mind is like, well, he needs the crystals to get us back to like our reality, right? So he gathers like a team of people, and like one of them was like Hitler Lincoln or something like that. Doesn't matter. The team of people are not important. But he goes through hell to get these crystals. Like he literally loses friends and family and people that he loved, and this whole monumental effort to get these crystals for Rick so Rick can save everyone. That's his mindset. He gets the crystals, he drops them off. Rick immediately chops them up and snorts them like blow. And he's like, what did you need the crystals for? He goes, oh, they're good stuff. Like, wait, that's it? That's what he did. And that the way it was so funny because of misunderstanding. Rick never said, I need the crystals to save us. Rick never said, this is what I need to save the whole household. He just said, I can really use some of those crystals. That's what I need right now. And he was working on the problem while Morty was out. Morty thought he was doing something important. And I remember that scene where he snorts them, and before the joke the punchline even landed, I knew what a punchline was, and I started laughing uncontrollably. That right there, that's a joke. And they used an entire 30 minutes to set up one joke. It was the entire episode was that one joke.
But it's a great joke.
Right,
and
brilliant.
I think there's a lesson there. You know, I figure, you know, on one hand, like I love the great Star Trek speeches.
Right.
Like in Balance of Terror, one of the great hours of sci-fi television, first season of Star Trek. You know, when Kirk doesn't know what to do, you see him wondering, like, okay, if we let this Romulan ship get home, it has proof that there's weakness on the Federation border. It's been attacking these outposts with their new weapons and their cloaking device, and it shows. And Spock has already told Kirk that we dare not let it get home.
Right.
And Kirk's in his quarters, and he's sitting there, and McCoy comes to visit him. And Kirk's thinking about what to do, and he's like, why me? You know, he's like, I'm the captain. I'm the one that has to make this monumental decision. And McCoy gives him the great, you know, speech. I'm paraphrasing, but he says, you know, in this galaxy, there's a mathematical probability of 1 million Earth-type planets.
Right.
And or a million stars. And then around those stars, 1 million Earth-type planets. You know, and in all of this vast cosmic infinitude, and perhaps more, there's only one of each of us. Don't destroy the one named Kirk. And you know, he makes the point. And to me, what's great about that, he wasn't talking about our feelings. He was explaining something about humanity in general. His speech was about all of mankind. That there's one of each one of every single one of us. In the entire cosmic infinitude of endlessness, there's only one of each human being. That's only awesome. One. And he's laying out how valuable each and every person in the universe's life actually is.
Yeah, out of trillions and trillions of people.
You know, yes. And it's a great point to make. But in modern Star Trek, people are all, well, listen, you know, I know how you feel, and how you feel is the most important thing in the world. And you have to make sure that you're doing the right thing for yourself, because of course and it's all me. The whole thing is inverted, like modern Star Trek. And then when they do talk about the universe or the Federation, it's a cliche speech about the Federation they would have made in the 60s, but they've just brought it forward because that's what the writers of today think they have to do.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. And That's why I hated the SNW version of that. Like there's people that were like, oh well, no, I mean it's cool, it exists by itself. But you don't understand. They're taking something that was already so perfect, and they're adding to it and making, because this is not like outside of the canon, so they're making it worse.
And not only that,
they're dumbing it down.
Not only do they totally dumb it down, but what's really interesting about what Strange New Worlds did with that is that in the original Balance of Terror, what makes it so good is you get to see the Romulan commander interacting with his best friend, his Centurion. And the great speech in that, from his perspective, you've already got the great McCoy Kirk speech. Now you've got the Centurion Romulan commander speech.
Mm-hmm.
And the Romulan commander is like, well, if the Earthmen, if they show weakness, we have to go back to Romulus, to the Praetor, and tell him this. So we have to do, this is our duty. If there's not weakness there, aren't we supposed to exploit weakness? And the Romulan commander is like, but must it always be so?
Right.
We return home, we will destroy the Earthman, and we will return home with proof of their weakness, and we will have it, and we'll go to war. And he says, great. So our gift to the homeland is another war. Meaning, and so modern Star Trek can't come near these juxtapositions of conversations, nor do the writers don't even know how to do that. You have two characters riding on motorcycles going, shouldn't you told me that before we took off on this chase?
Well, and to be fair, right, you're completely right, which we compared to Guardians of the Galaxy, but to be fair to Guardians of the Galaxy, there's some really good dialogue in
Guardians of the Galaxy is way better. I mean, the thing about I say Guardians of the Galaxy because that's the first Guardians of the Galaxy is the pinnacle of this kind of fun, entertaining,
the humorous sort of sci-fi thing.
Yeah, and taking interesting when an alien character, like what they did with Groot and his abilities compared to what they did with Rocket and his abilities, and how and Drax.
Well, even what they did in the second movie with him being like this, like sort of spawn of like this planetoid celestial being,
Ego, the living planet. Yeah,
it's great. Like that entire movie was basically like a story about why foster parents or step parents matter,
right?
Like this whole giant, like epic cosmic movie about godlike beings and powers. The whole moral of that was he might have been your father, boy, but he wasn't your daddy. That was the punchline to that. I lost it. And what an amazing line! What an amazing line!
And I'll tell you something. That whole movie is about how if you come from a broken family, it doesn't mean you can't find another family somewhere else.
Yeah, it's
you can
brilliant.
find love and accept. Yeah, and that's
so
again,
it's unfair to say like this is like they're trying to be like Guardians of the Galaxy, because if it was more like Guardians of the Galaxy, they were actually able to get to that level, then we would like it a lot more. Because I do believe that at least the first two Guardians of the Galaxy were really good, actually.
Right. And the thing is, I will say this. Without spoiling anything, I will say.
By the way, we've already spoiled a lot, but we've wrapped it into other things. I've noticed that Rob keeps bringing up things that aren't spoilers directly to this, but do actually tie into this.
Yeah,
it's very clever what you're doing. This is why I will always call you sir.
Well, I didn't want to say
because you are bringing up spoilers, but you're using other Star Trek episodes and series to do it. It's pretty clever.
Thank you.
I'm gonna write this down for future use.
Because everyone always gets mad at me. I mean, I will say this. I find it intriguing that this does have a link to a certain Star Trek episode.
It does. It has a link to a TNG
very
episode.
Direct link, which is intriguing to me. But the problem is that episode and how they're linking it, like what they're actually doing.
Right.
I can't say that what I don't even want to say the term. But
you can't use the term. You can't use the term. Not that.
I can't use.
Well, we can do it. We're going to be in the member section soon. We'll say it then.
Yeah.
I won't get in trouble. No one's going to that section.
But I feel here's what I think though. I feel that what we learn is the most reductive and rudimentary thing about this episode.
Yes, and I feel like it's also like anti-religion in a way.
Well, the original episode though has a
Sort
touch
of
of that,
was, yeah, it had the vibe.
but I do think that the way they've reduced it and made it less amazing, whereas
yeah,
in the original TNG episode,
there was like a spirituality to it. It's not
yes,
here.
there's
It's not.
and there was a definite meaning towards all civilizations in the Star
Okay, you
Trek
got to hold
universe.
that thought.
Yeah, you're right.
We're gonna go to the member section right now. Before we do, I have one last question. Speaking of comic books, I feel like
should we answer super chats before we go to member section?
Yeah, I'm gonna answer super chats, and then we're going to the member section and we'll talk a little more freely. But real quick, speaking of Far Side Comics, how about the 2 starships? Just think about that, and we'll finish that thought in the member section. Just that's all I gotta say. Okay, super chats. I know. I want to watch that thing like Rob's gonna watch this, and he's gonna have some thoughts.
Yeah.
Michael Nemo for $5. Thank you, Michael. Says reach around Star Trek Discovery.
Yeah. I wish it was. I'd watch it more.
All right. Another one from Michael Nemo. Thank you, Mike. It says, remember this written by Michelle Paradise used to mean something. Crickets. Yeah, I used to think that Michelle Paradise was a really clever writer. And I used to think a lot of people that are now been giving Star Trek jobs were like, I used to think Goldsman was clever. And maybe at one time he was, but like the second they get Star Trek, they become like a parody. Like they all had, and they all do the same thing. They all write the same way with the same problems. It's like I guess they're all taking credit for, like, if you had to ask me what episode was Paradise, what episode was Goldsman, what episodes was Kurtzman, I wouldn't tell you because they all have the same exact weird sort of reductive style.
I think that they're all writing Star Trek from a place of being outside of it. It's a fun, hip pop culture artifact.
Mm-hmm.
They don't take it seriously.
Right.
Like I take it too seriously.
Right.
Because, I grew up with it since I was a little kid. It was always very important to me. I read all the technical manuals. I read all the novels, all that stuff. So I took it very seriously, but it's really difficult for people to take Star Trek seriously. Yeah. They take it as this fun pop culture thing that also had something to say about humanity. Right. And they look at all the characters, and even the characters are almost, that's why I think that Galaxy Quest is a perfect example of what most of the world views as Star Trek. Because the show Galaxy Quest within that movie is still, they make it to be kind of goofy. Right. It's a perfect understanding of how the normal world sees Star Trek.
Yeah. No, that's why I will forever love Galaxy Quest.
I will too.
Galaxy Quest it's on my honorable Star Trek movies list, and I think it was funny that I was watching before we made our Galaxy Quest doc. I was watching another doc. It was like Never Surrender or something like that. I forgot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was watching it not to copy them, but to not use. I didn't want to include. I wanted to add things that were already not in that movie. And luckily, it was not very hard because like 90% of that movie is just them talking to actors on the show. There was no actual information, right. Which I'm not knocking that. That's a different style of documentary that needs to exist. But when me and Shane do a documentary, it's all about like, let me educate you in as little time as possible. I want to show you the full story. Even if we had access to actors, we wouldn't probably have time to let them talk for 20 minutes about how Sigourney Weaver's hair looked or whatever, But on that, it started off with this really cool quote where it's like this Pulitzer Prize winning journalist was on record saying the greatest movie ever made was Galaxy Quest. And you're like, okay, I'll take it. Anyways, I don't know how I got on the tangent. Listen,
but could Galaxy Quest be a great movie if you didn't know about Star Trek and Shatner and all the real characters?
No.
But what I think it's such a great deconstruction of not just Star Trek itself, but what does it mean to be an actor? Right. And what does it mean to be an actor who gets stuck in a franchise property? Right. Yeah, gets stuck in a rut, which is what Shane covered in our doc. That was so great. Like, one reason when the guy wanted to write this character of Tim Allen's character was after watching a movie.
It was like it was called like To the Stars. It was a doc about space, and the voiceover was Leonard Nimoy, and he's like, this guy is so typecast. He even when it's a voiceover, he's playing Spock. Like, wouldn't a movie about a character like that be awesome? And that was his first idea for Galaxy Quest, or at the time it was called Captain Starshine.
Right.
Which is, I would argue, might be a better title. It's more fun. All right, so we are going to go to the member section. Before we do, I have some more super chats. First off, Rec Thoughts. He says, awesome to catch you two, the coolest dudes, live. Lots of love from your favorite camera.
People hate me now on the stream. They're going to be like, who is this pretentious F?
No, dude, guys, if you guys don't know who Rob Burnett is, Rob is great. And I put the link in the description. Rob is awesome. They have to know you by now. You've been on somebody's stream. Frodo lived for $1.99, making my trip home wonderful. Thanks, guys. Thank you, Frodo. I appreciate it. And I love your emails. Sorry I haven't answered you recently. I've been killing myself lately. Not literally. That's obviously a figurative statement, but I've been working really hard. Michael Nemo says, narratively, the strongest aspects of STD have been the three characters of Saru, Mir Burnham, and Mir Loka. Full stop. Mir Lorca. That's for me.
From the first season.
Yeah, that's the first season. Mir Lorca was actually pretty interesting. I wish they had not killed him off. Yeah, I feel like he had a lot more going for him. Like he was bad in the sense where he came from a mirror universe where you had to be bad to survive, but it seems like he didn't want to be the bad guy anymore.
Yeah, I mean, and by the way, that mirror universe idea was originally, that was a Fuller idea too. I think they did.
Fuller had some good ideas, but I do believe he did plan to go as woke as possible with Star Trek.
Oh no, I think. Well, here's the thing. I mean, if you look at his Hannibal, he gender swapped characters. He went woke. He did call it that, but he does it in a really interesting way.
I guess if the story is really good, a lot of people will forgive anything.
And he plays a lot with that. I mean, he's a very, very smart guy. And
I wouldn't have minded Michael Burnham if Michael Burnham, like, I have no issue with the main character being a black woman. You can call me racist for not liking the character. My problem is not with her skin color or her gender.
No, and she's actually a great actress, and yes. And she's beautiful.
It's that she literally committed mutiny in the first episode, and now she's the captain of the ship.
Well, and the funny thing is like the story they set up that you have a character that has done a terrible thing that gets disgraced, drummed out, and if you're going to tell the tale of her restoring her sense of self and dignity and all, and this entire series was about her climb back up the ladder, but she was made excellent by episode 3.
Right.
Back. She's committed mutiny and then is all of a sudden back, and now she's like the most capable person in the world.
And you're going to see that in episode 4, they address that. You're going to see that when you watch it this weekend, I'm assuming. And they actually address that. And it's very interesting the way they address that.
Well, that's good.
They do. They address that, and I can't say anything more about it, but it's very interesting the way they do. Because, by episode 3, it's almost ridiculous how far she got in 3 episodes.
Yeah.
Also, the whole Klingon, there's too much to complain about in that, but like the Klingon War, they shouldn't have added that. It's such a large event. It's too hard to minimize into some, a story about a ship we had not heard of yet. It makes the entire thing unbelievable.
Yeah, well, that was like the rest of the show. I mean, there's so much in Discovery that they've done over this 5 years and I don't think, especially like the internal makeup of starships, the set design alone, on these new shows, the idea that they're not on cruise ships.
Right.
They don't have these big, you don't have on a naval vessel or whatever. There's not all this. It's a spaceship. You don't have a lot of extra space.
Well, what about the spaceship in this first episode that is like changing its configuration just to literally flip off Michael Burnham on the way out? Did you see that?
Well, yeah, and they keep doing that. I mean, the warp nacelles are no longer attached to the Enterprise. It's like, what? Yeah. Who decided? I mean, you have a show where the ships themselves are iconic. people put them on their shelves. You know, you could buy miniatures or model kits.
Got one right there.
Why would you do something like that? Why would you take the idea of a starship and mess with it and go like, see, you don't even need to have your engine connected to the rest of the ship.
Yeah, and
I
that
mean,
makes it harder to make toys.
Well, not just, but it also makes
You
it
can't
harder
even
to
like
think.
connect in the cells anymore.
I mean, even look, the design of the Discovery that you can fly through the saucer section, that it's open.
And that makes no sense. That like what? Why
There's
would
no structural integrity there.
Yeah, there's no idea. And like it was almost like, well, what about when they build planes? Like planes have wind force. Like they're in space. And none of that makes sense.
Well, even the look of the ships don't make sense.
It don't make sense. Yeah, from Big Worm. Oh yeah, Book's ship makes 0 sense. It's like shaped like an L or something. I'm like, why? Big Worm for $5. Thank you, Big Worm. He says, just saw RMB tweet about STD. Then I saw this was live, and here he is. I'm 30 minutes behind. Coming in hot, 2 times speed. Thank you, Big Worm. Probably caught it by now. Michael Nemo for $10. Like Kirk changed his mind in Arena. Another moment like that is a seemingly throwaway line from what is that? I can't read. VI. Oh my God. I'm forgetting. 6. It never even occurred to me to take Gordon at his word. That line alone is very Trek for me. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep.
Joe Cronin. What's up, Joe? What's up, man? 2 of my favorite people. See, how are you doing, boys? Much love. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate you, man. Michael Cronenberg on Discovery is like Laurence Olivier on the Love Boat. That's good. Michael Nemo, Strange New Worlds is a sequel to the Space Precinct. That's funny.
I don't know. I'm a Jerry Anderson fan. I don't know how I feel about that.
That's funny. Toy fanboy. Off topic, but I need to know, Rob, do you like Stargate? Hashtag we want Stargate. And speaking of, before you answer that, a friend of mine right now on Twitter is losing her mind because, I'll show you.
About general or just about this conversation?
About this. So I took this image from the Star Trek website. All right.
Right.
And if you notice, it's on where is it? Oh, it's the actual. This is their website. So this is StarTrek.com. Right. I took this image, right mouse click, save, and all I did was I removed the words from it. That's it. It's the same image. Look at this. This is their website. This is my image. I just removed the words. That's all I did. It's not my fault that they used a Stargate in the background. People are, and she zooms in here. She's like, that's a Stargate. I'm like, I know, but I didn't do it. I know you would think the guy who loves Stargate would add a Stargate to a Star Trek poster, but guess what? This is StarTrek.com/news/Discovery Season 5. That is their headline. That's their image. All I did was remove the text. I'm a good designer, so I understand why you would think that, but all I did was remove the text. That's it.
Well, why don't we just spoil it and say the Gaul do appear and it's a big crossover and they just didn't want anyone to know.
Oh, no. Don't. No, you can't spoil it. The CBS snipers are going to find me, man. But yeah, it does look like a Stargate. And honestly, like that's pretty much a Stargate. So.
That's pretty much Stargate.
Right?
To be honest, Stargate is one of my blank spots. I saw the movie. I love the movie, but I never caught up with the show because it started like in the 90s and I just wasn't watching TV. I was never, other than Star Trek. I've never been a huge TV guy other than like miniseries or certain shows that I've loved, but I'd never caught up with Stargate. And I'll tell you something, because so many people starting on YouTube and a lot of people have talked to me about Stargate, I've watched the first season of Stargate SG-1. I thought it was really good. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
And it gets better.
Yeah, that's I did watch
an episode. The first season is like them trying to find their chemistry. I believe by the third season, it's pretty much set in stone, rock and roll. It feels like if there was a Star Trek show called Star Trek Away Missions, that's what it is.
Right. There is an episode, it's like a self-reflexive episode where that somebody told me to watch and then I jumped ahead. and I forget the name of it, but
Window of Opportunity is one of the most popular ones. That's the one
it
where
was
there's like a time loop thing going on.
no, it's the one where they were like making a Stargate show.
Oh yeah, it's called Wormhole X.
Oh, is that yes?
And by the way,
Okay.
you have encyclopedic knowledge of Star Trek, and I have that for Stargate.
Oh well, that I thought that episode was pretty genius.
Oh, brilliant! And I love what they do. In that episode, they go, "Why are we helping them, sir?" He goes, "Well, it's better to help them so that the public never actually find out what's happening. Than to let them, go off on their own, and they might actually reveal something that's accurate." And you're like, "Wait a minute, are you doing that right now?" Wait a minute. And then you Google Cheyenne Mountain, and you realize there's an actual military base in you call it NORAD in Cheyenne Mountain. You're like, wait a minute, what the?
Yeah,
it's great.
No, but it's good. I mean, I really enjoy it. It's daunting to get, and I made me understand what people. I was like, you should just watch Star Trek. And I was like, okay, I'll start watching Stargate. What is there? 9 seasons, 11 seasons, or something?
Oh yeah, there's 9 seasons of
SG1.
And
that's then the Stargate Universe and Stargate Atlantis.
And there's 5 seasons of SG Atlantis, and there's 2 seasons of Universe.
Yeah, man. But
listen, the movie is one of my all-time favorites.
Dude, I loved the movie.
Love it, dude. James Spader. I became a fan the second I saw him in that movie.
Vivica Lindfors, the old lady who works in the base.
So great. And I'm sorry, Shari is absolutely stunning. What's funny is I think that my formative years of my early teens was almost set to wanting that kind of a woman, because I married a woman with very similar features. Like she has caramel skin, the same exact kind of hair, very large eyes, the same exact features. And I didn't realize this until years and years later. I'm watching the original movie with my kids 2 weeks ago, and I'm like, I think I'm married.
Dude, that's it. It totally. I mean, whatever that means, it totally is what defines. To me, femininity came out of Star Trek. Girls that were very feminine, big hips, big boobs.
Big hips.
They looked. It was that 60s thing, though.
Yeah, it's still never ended for me. I was like, that's still my preferred body shape.
Because now it's so funny, because I look at people online going, I saw a picture on Twitter, of a picture of a woman that was this beautiful woman, and someone said that they were complaining about her body. I'm like, I'm like, what?
Why?
I'm like, wait, what? And I couldn't believe it. And again, every era has different standards of beauty. Dudes, when we were growing up, dudes took off their shirts, and as long as they weren't, fat, they didn't have to have abs. They don't have to look like Zac fucking Efron or Ryan Gosling. I mean, those are two great specimens.
Although
of men.
poor Zac Efron right now looks like, because he did that Iron Claw, and he looks like,
yeah, he's so jacked.
He took it a little too far. It looks like he no longer looks like the attractive man. He looks like the guy who might kill you outside of a 7-Eleven.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, those guys were, and Ryan Gosling, really handsome dudes.
Right.
That chiseled body, it's impossible to maintain that in real life.
It's impossible, right?
But you can, it's how beauty standards change.
Right.
So you're formed
media has a big thing to do with that. I mean, look at even comics. Comics at one point went from every character had big boobs to every character having curves. That over time, that changed that. And people, a lot of young men, their sort of formative years were shaped from that, which is why curves are so popular. I remember there was a time where it was really popular to be blonde and really super skinny, and something like that. And now that's not the social preferred shape anymore.
No, I mean, I fell in love with Asian women because of Godzilla movies, especially Godzilla versus the Astro Monster. The alien from all the aliens from Planet X, like the controller, were all Japanese, and there was this this hot Japanese girl wearing the silver and black outfit from Planet X. I mean, what's not to love? So, there you go.
And I fell in love with Latin women because of a Stargate movie where for some reason they all look like, even though they're on an Egyptian equivalent of a world, they look like Mexicans.
Well, I mean, to me, my first celebrity crush was Nichelle Nichols.
Oh yeah, there you go.
I mean, a mirror with the
Yep,
exposed midriff.
I
And all
remember.
that.
Oh, I remember.
The first time I ever encountered overt racism, which I was totally upset by, was I was like 8 years old, and somebody was telling me that Nichelle Nichols, they used a very disparaging term,
Hmm.
and I couldn't understand it because I thought she was the most beautiful woman in the world,
Right.
and this kid was on the playground taunting me because of it and said a bunch of horrible things, and I go home to my father, and I was really perplexed by this. I
Of
remember
course.
I get to my dad because my dad loved everybody. He loved everybody. He
Right.
didn't have a bad thing to say about anyone. And I tried to explain to my dad what was happening and why. I'm like, I don't understand. I mean, she's part of the command crew of the Enterprise. She's like the most beautiful woman ever. And in Mirror, Dad, I mean, she's wearing like a bikini on the bridge and she's got a knife, and she taunts Sulu. You have to come back.
Right.
You didn't come back. I mean, she could bust his ass, and I don't understand. And my dad had to explain to me that there are people that don't like different colored human beings.
Right. Which makes no sense.
And I, in my mind, I'm thinking, but there aren't. Lieutenant Uhura was only one color. Like
Right.
there wasn't a different Lieutenant Uhura. You couldn't say that you like what color would you have wanted her to be? Like I couldn't understand. I mean, because in my mind, Lieutenant Uhura was just Lieutenant Uhura. Like
Right.
there was no alternative.
There's skin color didn't come into it yet.
And I could rifle through all the different girls on Star Trek I thought were hot. Different kinds of girls.
Are you kidding me? Let me tell you something. If green women were a reality, that would be my preference. Okay?
Well, that was another thing. I mean, and there were two. There was
I really wish green was a real skin color.
And my dad had to explain to me. It was such a weird conversation because my dad explained to me what racism was, and I'm like, because you're watching Star Trek as a kid. I'm like, but. Well, and in my mind, I was trying to explain to him, like, but Dad, if we're in spaceships and I was like, Uhura's Swahili, she's from the United States of Africa in the time of Star Trek, and like there's people from all over Earth on the Enterprise, and the whole point is that we're from Earth,
right? It's just
and
Earth.
My dad's like, well, and I'm like, but Dad, we're from Earth,
right?
Like we're all from Earth. There's only
Earth. We're all from Earth.
We're all from Earth.
Yeah, I don't get it.
And my dad didn't get it. And it was so fun. I mean, I think my dad was charmed or endeared by the whole thing, but I didn't get it for a long time. And I'm like, I also didn't understand, like, Nichelle Nichols is smoking hot in the original series.
Yeah, she's great.
And I just couldn't understand why someone wouldn't think that was hot.
Yeah.
Couldn't get it. I just didn't. I still don't, to be honest.
Dude, I have a similar story. I went to watch Independence Day with my dad when I was young. Like the original one, like Independence Day with Will Smith and I'm forgetting
Vivica Fox.
Yes, Vivica Fox.
Oh my God.
Jeez. My goodness. And I remember I remember leaving and thinking the movie is so great. And we're walking to our car and some guy in the parking lot is yelling at some girl, and they're like having this big blown out fight, and he's being a total jerk and just using every racial term, and they're yelling back and forth. And I'm like, I'm just like, I get close to my pops because I don't know who these people are. He's like, this is why we need aliens to attack, son. And that was it. But this profound statement, he goes, this is why we need that to happen in real life. Because we need something else to rage against. We need more. We don't have enough problems. But it was like the perfect ending to that movie. Because all of a sudden now I get it. Because in that movie they all put their differences aside to fight the worst threat. All right, we got one couple more here. Michael Nemo, why doesn't Picard look like Data now?
Well, he is a synth, after all. That was another thing. They gave him a synth body that looked exactly like himself. So here's another thing.
Seemed like just like
why just wouldn't they create synths that look like they're humans, like you were saying earlier?
Yeah,
like why do they have to?
This synth in this one, like, so in this episode there is a synth. I don't think it's a spoiler. I'm pretty sure it's in at least like the trailer or something. But there's a synth, and the synth looks like Data. And here's a small spoiler. There's a lot more to it that looks more. It's a lot more like Data than what the trailer shows. And that's why I believe there has to, like, they're trying to make a connection, which, like, I agree, it's sort of lazy, but I think they're trying to make a connection because we've already established that, like, synths can look like anything. It doesn't have to be, like, specifically yellow-eyed, white-skinned, pale, blue-skinned, and it doesn't have to be Data. Like, this is this is Alton Soon android. That's what it is, 100%. So they have to be making the connection. Like, they have to be. Or they're just so lazy and dumb. The only synth they know of is Data, and that's the one they use? Like, imagine that, dude. Imagine they're just like, we don't know those synths.
I don't know anything because I've only watched the first episode. I would imagine that isn't there supposed to be some kind of wacky cameos or something in this show? Like,
yeah, but the cameos are like they're relegated to like callbacks. Like, it's like they're not. From what I've seen, I have 3 more episodes to watch that I haven't. I've watched up to episode, I think, 5.
Okay, so they have already made a massive tie-in.
Yeah, in episode 1, they make a huge tie-in.
A huge tie-in to a very specific episode-specific tie-in,
which we're going to talk about in the member section. So if you're a member, hit the join button. Go ahead.
But and it's interesting that here's the thing. It bothers me that a 31st century Star Trek show has to go back and make a specific tie-in.
Right.
I mean, it's fine that they did that. I mean, normally I wouldn't care, but I think that in this case, it kind of diminishes. And because they've set it up to be, to be of a specific time period.
900 plus years.
Yeah. Yeah. And it just worries me I have a theory just by watching this first episode.
Yeah, I got a little theory too. Yeah. Okay.
But I think we're going to see a significant character from Star Trek's past.
Oh no! Don't even say it. Great. I just realized what you're thinking. That's crazy.
I don't know if you. Okay, I'm going to tell you.
It's canonically possible, though.
Okay, but it's canonical. It's not who you're thinking. I don't think it's who you think.
Okay.
I'm thinking. So I'll say this. So. Well, I can't say it in the non-membership.
Okay, wait. We have a couple more super chats. We're going to the member section. I desperately want to see what you're saying. 200 Watt Studio. My favorite part of the CIA headquarters is the gift shop. Does Section 3 want to have a gift shop? I want a branded coffee mug. You know what's funny? They do sell the black badge mugs on the website, on the Star Trek website. John Burns. Yeah, I can post super chats here. Oh, thanks, man. Appreciate that. I didn't know you couldn't post super chats. What the hell? YouTube is constantly screwing me. John Burns again. STNV room enough for the captain to cook. Oh yeah, you're right. That's a good point. If there's that much room in for the elevators, that's why he has an entire like restaurant in which to live in. Jesus. You realize like the captain's quarters is bigger than my house? Like the house I live in, it's bigger than my house.
It's pretty big. Do you have a fireplace that works?
I don't have a fireplace that works. I do have one, but it stopped working like in the 1970s, and no one figured out how to get it working now. It's like it has like the fake thing there, but no gas comes out of it whatsoever. And I'm honestly even afraid to try to get it on. I feel like I'll just blow my house up. Another one for John Burns. Never caught Stargate, so no Babylon 5. No, I watch Babylon 5 too. I just prefer when it comes to Babylon 5, I prefer DS9. And they're very similar.
I love Babylon 5.
I do too.
I thought that, to me,
but the fee for entry was lower because I had already invested all my time into Star Trek. I knew how the universe worked and it had a similar vibe, so I always gravitated toward DS9 instead.
That's fair. I just thought Stargate or Babylon 5 had a really interesting. I like the politics of it all the different races. I love that where they took Londo Mollari and Jakar and how Jakar was such a dick and they turned him into this very noble character. And then the whole idea of the shadows. It was a shame that Straczynski wrapped up the Shadow War and kind of like the midway point through season 4 because he didn't know if he was going to get a 5th season. Mm-hmm. And that's why they filmed the final episode at the time.
Yeah,
Sleeping in Light.
we've been slowly working on like a whole documentary, like the history of Babylon 5.
Oh,
We don't know when when it's gonna be done. It takes a long time to do anything nowadays.
yeah.
But it's interesting because if you look at the animated movie that came out,
Yep.
you can see that the creator really wants to come back to that universe, and he's trying really hard, and he's even trying to like make connections via animation to make the franchise more valuable to someone to start it up again. He really
Straczynski, totally. And I'm surprised when he made that movie. I mean, it obviously has ties, or the kind of movie it was, to a lot of things that are happening in other franchises today.
Yeah, it did.
Which is cool a bit, but I feel bad because so many people like Richard Biggs and Jeff Conway and Mia Furlan and all these great actors that were in the show are no longer with us. And so Jerry Doyle, and it's kind of a bummer. But I mean, I'm curious if they're going to reboot it, would they reboot it from scratch a la Galactica style, or would they start telling a new story?
They would have to.
I think they probably would reboot the whole thing, but the problem is I think the mythology and everything was so good.
Yeah, but can't you do the same, like with Battlestar Galactica? That reboot really worked because of the nature of the story.
Yeah, and also some people, anyone who's precious about Battlestar Galactica is wrong, because so much of that show was goofy.
Right, that was the point of it, right?
It was, yeah.
No, I know. I'm sorry, I hate to say it, but what they made in 2011, at least subjectively for me, is a much better product.
I completely agree.
And I'm not. And
it's not perfect, but man, it's not perfect. Up well.
I'm not railing on the original. Like, if you like it, that's great. There's parts of it I like, but
sure.
the quote unquote reboot was just better storytelling, more profound characters, and just and it wasn't like, oh, it's gritty for the sake of being gritty. Like, it actually had tragic heroes in it that also had humanity that. And if you go back, even Cylons that you cared for, it was crazy.
Totally. You go back and you watch the original Battlestar Galactica, and in the pilot, all of humanity is destroyed. And by the end of the pilot, when they're on the Ovion homeworld and they're in a space casino, and you've got the girls with the 3 eyes and the 2 mouths. Starbuck's like, hey, we could get those girls and put them on the circuit. We can make a lot of money. And I'm thinking, even when I was a kid watching that for the first time in '78, I'm like, who's going to watch this? Everyone's dead.
Right.
The entire human race is dead. And Starbuck's like, yeah, we could make some money with them. Like, and where are you going to spend it? Even as a kid, I'm like, that's the dumbest shit I've ever heard.
It also sounds extremely problematic for you to consider pimping something. It's like,
well, they were an act. They were a music act. So you wanted to like manage them.
Right. But like the whole thing doesn't make any sense. That's funny. Michael Nemo, Stargate pilot had tits because of Showtime. Yes, it did. Showtime wanted nudity, and Brad Wright said, I don't want nudity. I want everyone to be able to watch my show. And they're like, you don't seem to get it. We're fucking Showtime, and we have blood, guts, and nudity, bitch. Go get it and make it happen for me.
Yeah.
Brad Wright did the least amount he could to please the studio and still tell the story you want to tell. The least amount. And it was totally unimportant. It added nothing to the story whatsoever. So, and no, like, I'm not a prude. I have no problem with boobies. But to be fair, it didn't add anything to the story. It just was there for boobs. And you take that 1, 2 or 3 second scene out, and the entire episode goes from R-rated to PG, basically, because even the violence is like so nominal. So I think it was a smart move when they went to sci-fi, and Brad Wright specifically cut that one quick scene out, and it dropped the rating from TVMA to TVPG. And I gotta say, you have one scene of one boob in that first episode, then your entire series is now labeled TVMA forever.
Right.
So it was smart for him to remove that 3 seconds of footage. That's all I'm going to say.
I agree.
Again, no problem with boobs, though. No issue whatsoever. Okay, that's the last. Of course, that's the last. The last super chat is the one I'm talking about, boobs. It's great.
Good one. Yeah.
All right, we're going to the members section. Come on over if you want to join us. It's pretty simple. In fact, it's really simple. All you got to do is hit the join button below. And Rob and I are gonna hang out there a little bit, and we're gonna be a little more free, actually a lot more free with our opinions and in our speech. And if you don't like spoilers, might not be the right place. But come on over, hit that join button, and right now, the second I end this, I'm gonna start another stream. And what happens is when this one ends, it's gonna take you to that stream. So join, become a member. The only reason we do this show is because we have members. If there was no members, I probably would not be doing this show every week. But members bring me back every time. We actually make almost zero money on this channel. It was demonetized last September, and we just never got our ad rates back. It's disappeared. But I appreciate you guys, and we are going to go to the members section. Here's the deal. If you can't join us, that's cool. I'll be back on Saturday on the Salty Nerd Show, and then next Monday at 4:00, we're going to be talking about the second episode, hopefully, of this. And I know we should be talking about news and stuff, but this is actually more interesting to me. So I want to talk about Star Trek, at least for a couple weeks before I lose all interest again, okay? Because right now I'm really interested in complaining about it. So I'm going to do that for a couple weeks. Is that cool with you, Rob?
That's cool with me because this could be, I think I'm out. I mean, I watched the Section 31 movie. Mm-hmm. But I think that at the end of this, my Star Trek journey is complete.
You know what's funny is that's exactly what Shane said. Shane was like, okay, you know what? Because I told him we got the screeners. And he's like, I never realized how little I care about that now. And I'm like, okay, so what do you want to do? He goes, I think that we need to wait for Star Trek Discovery to be over. And when it's over, when it's done and the Section 31 movie's out, when everything that we've ever spoken about is done, I think we make one last video and just burn the bridge behind us. And I was like, damn, Shane? He goes, yes. Like Joker walking out of the hospital, bro. Just pop it on the way out and never talk about it again. I'm like, okay.
I mean, there's still a lot of love I have for Star Trek, but it's no longer, it's lost any relevancy that it had for me. It's over.
Yeah, it's too. Okay, well, we're going to the members section. I hope you guys enjoying us. You're going to see a screen pop up for a little bit, and then you'll be moved over. And I hope you can join us over there. And we're heading there now. Rob, you got anything to say before we split?
No, but no. Hey, I think that if Discovery is your first Star Trek love, more power to you. And I'm sure it led you into the rest of the franchise, which is a good thing.
Yeah. I don't have a problem. Hey, by the way, anyone can like anything. And I will always be as honest as I can about it. I will never disparage someone for liking something. Guys, nope. I love the Fast and Furious franchise. Make fun of me all you want. I think it's awesome.
Dude, I did too up until Fast 7 or 8. Fast 9 and 10, I can't even watch.
It started to get really stupid.
Dude, I'm a huge Tokyo Drift fan. And
Same.
I think
Tokyo Drift.
Dude, I know. As I like to just call it the Drift.
I know DJ Shadow, the guy that wrote the theme song.
Oh, dude, I have that album.
I know him in real life. He's in my phone.
That 7 Days is from. I love that
album. At the starting, dude, I love it. I love that entire movie. That movie is. People act like it's like the redheaded stepchild of Fast and Furious. You guys don't understand.
Dude, Han is my favorite character.
Han is one of my favorite characters too. Yes,
and he's the best in that movie.
Although I want to know how little Bow Wow got like that custom Bow Wow van that was worth like $50,000-$60,000 on a high school student's salary.
He's got pink slips. He's in Japan, man. No, The Drift is the best. The Drift is the best.
No, it's great. It's a great.
I mean, Fast 5 is the best Fast and Furious.
Be entertained by whatever you want. Nothing's wrong with that whatsoever. We have a job to criticize the things that we dislike or have problems with, but more importantly, that we know so well. And Rob, like I said, I know a lot about Stargate. Rob and Shane, my brother, know a lot about Star Trek. Love Star Trek, but I've always kept my knowledge that in my folders are full of a lot of Stargate information, and Star Trek is like a subfolder. So when you love something so much, it's easier to criticize it when people do bad things with it. So we're going to criticize it, but if you like it, that's completely okay. You're allowed to. In fact, I applaud the fact that you like it. All right, we're heading over there. Ready, brother?
Yep.
Guys, love you. See you in the member section.